Eternal Dominion. What if the Roman Empire never fell? By Reginald Twiddlebottom. Chapter 1. Foundations Reinforced. In the twilight of the 5th century AD, when the Roman Empire teetered on the edge of oblivion, history seemed destined to repeat its pattern of decline and fragmentation. The Western Empire, besieged by relentless invasions and internal strife, stood at the precipice of collapse. Yet, in this alternate timeline, a different path was forged. Rome did not fall. Instead, bold leaders arose, willing to embrace unorthodox methods to secure the eternal dominion of the empire. Instead of resisting change, the emperors of this reimagined Rome recognized that adaptation was the key to survival. They turned their focus inward, identifying the cracks that had allowed the empire to weaken. The bureaucracy, bloated and inefficient, underwent drastic reforms. New strategies of governance were implemented, designed to reinforce unity and solidify control across vast territories. The Senate, once a dwindling remnant of its former glory, found new purpose as advisors and policymakers working alongside the emperor to forge a Rome that was both strong and flexible.
One of the most revolutionary policies introduced was the systematic integration of the Germanic tribes and other so-called barbarians into the Roman structure, not as enemies or subjugated people, but as true Romans. The Goths, Franks, Vandals, and others were not merely granted Roman citizenship, but were given meaningful roles in governance and the military. Unlike past attempts at assimilation, which often led to unrest, this integration was carefully planned. Latin became their tongue, Roman customs became their own, and in time their loyalty to the empire outweighed their old tribal affiliations.
The Roman legions, once weakened by internal conflicts and the recruitment of unreliable mercenaries, found themselves revitalized. Instead of being a fragmented force that relied on conscripts with divided allegiances, the new Roman army became a unified and professional institution, drawing its strength from the very people who had once threatened the empire. Military academies, established across the empire, ensured that every recruit was not only trained in combat, but also in the values of Roman discipline, strategy, and civic duty. With a renewed military and a strengthened internal structure, the empire was ready to reassert its dominance. The borders, once vulnerable, were reinforced with a vast network of fortifications, roads, and supply chains that ensured swift mobility for the legions. The northern frontiers, particularly along the Rhine and Danube, became heavily fortified, yet no longer served as stark dividing lines between civilization and the so-called barbarian world. Instead, they were transformed into dynamic zones of cultural and economic exchange, bridging Rome with the lands beyond. Commerce flourished as Rome embraced the new world order it was forging. Trade routes extended deeper into Germania, the steppes of Asia, and even sub-Saharan Africa. The Mediterranean, long the empire's beating heart, now pulsed with renewed energy as goods, ideas, and people moved freely within the empire's vast expanse. By ensuring economic stability, the empire not only secured its own wealth, but also cemented its place as the unchallenged hub of civilization.
Yet, Rome's transformation was not merely material. It was cultural, ideological, and deeply philosophical. No longer clinging to the rigid traditions that had both defined and limited it, Rome evolved into a society where diversity was no longer seen as a threat, but as an asset. The concept of Roman identity shifted. It was no longer exclusively tied to birthright or geography, but became a shared ideal. To be Roman was to be part of something greater, a civilization that stood above all others, not merely because of its might, but because of its vision.
And so, as the empire entered the 6th century, it did so not as a fractured remnant of a bygone golden age, but as a revitalized and ascendant force. Rome had defied history. It had refused to fall. It had become eternal. Chapter 2. The unyielding structure. The first and most urgent task was to strengthen the empire's road network. The famed Roman roads, already marvels of engineering, were extended further into the empire's hinterlands and beyond its frontiers. The Via Appia, the Via Augusta, and other arterial routes were not only maintained but expanded into a sophisticated network that connected even the most distant provinces. Roads became more than military highways. They were lifelines of trade, culture, and governance.
With the introduction of improved paving techniques, these roads were built to last for centuries, reinforced with layers of stone, gravel, and concrete. They allowed legions to move at unprecedented speeds, merchants to transport their goods with efficiency, and administrators to maintain direct oversight of far-flung territories. Along these roads, milestones marked distances, and fortified stations provided security, ensuring that the empire remained interconnected and secure.
Equally crucial to Rome's enduring dominance was the enhancement of its water management systems. Aqueducts, already marvels of human ingenuity, were expanded to ensure that even the most remote settlements had access to fresh water. Engineers developed new techniques for filtering and storing water, reducing the risk of contamination and ensuring that sanitation standards remained high throughout the empire. Cities that had once struggled with limited water supplies now thrived, their populations growing and their economies booming.
Rome itself, the Eternal City, saw an unprecedented transformation. The capital was no longer merely a relic of past grandeur, but a living testament to the empire's resurgence. The Forum, once the heart of Roman public life, was revitalized with new buildings grander than before, celebrating both the empire's past and its future. The Colosseum and Circus Maximus remained centers of entertainment, but now with added structures that provided greater seating capacity and improved facilities.
Beyond Rome, provincial cities flourished as well. Londinium London, Lutetia Paris, and Augusta Trevorum Trier were no longer distant outposts, but thriving urban centers, boasting temples, bathhouses, theaters, and forums that mirrored those of Rome itself. The empire's commitment to urban development ensured that every citizen, no matter how far from the capital, lived in a city that reflected the grandeur and order of Roman civilization.
Perhaps the most ambitious undertaking of this era was the expansion of the empire's defensive structures. The border fortifications, such as Hadrian's Wall in Britain and the Limes Germanicus along the Rhine, were transformed from simple barriers into sophisticated defense systems. Watchtowers, signal stations, and fortified supply depots ensured that any potential invasion would be met with swift and overwhelming resistance. The legions stationed along these borders were no longer isolated outposts. They were now part of a comprehensive network designed for rapid communication and mobilization.
In the east, Constantinople, the jewel of the empire, became an unassailable bastion. Its walls were reinforced with cutting-edge defensive technology, making the city nearly impregnable. Massive cisterns were constructed to store water, ensuring that the city could withstand even the longest sieges. The Bosporus Strait, once merely a geographical feature, became a strategic lifeline, guarded by a powerful navy that controlled maritime trade and security.
The transformation of the empire's physical landscape did more than secure its borders and facilitate trade. It shaped the very identity of Rome. The people of the empire, whether in Hispania, Egypt, or Syria, could walk through their cities and see the same familiar structures, forums, basilicas, baths, and amphitheaters. This architectural unity fostered a sense of belonging, a shared cultural experience that transcended ethnic and regional differences.
By the late 6th century, Rome stood as a marvel of human achievement. It was not merely a collection of cities and provinces. It was a civilization woven together by stone, water, and steel. The unyielding structure of Rome was more than an empire. It was an idea, an ideal that no force, neither time nor conquest, could erode. Chapter 3. The Law of the Land.
Roman law, already one of history's greatest legal achievements, entered a new phase of refinement. The 12 Tables, the foundation of Roman jurisprudence, were expanded into a more sophisticated and adaptable legal system that accommodated the vast cultures and traditions encompassed by the empire. The emperors, advised by the most brilliant legal minds of the age, commissioned a grand project, the Codex Romanum, a comprehensive and evolving legal code that would serve as the backbone of governance for centuries to come.
Unlike the rigid laws of earlier times, the Codex Romanum was designed to be adaptable. While the fundamental principles of Roman justice, order, duty, and the rule of law remained sacrosanct, new provisions allowed for regional laws to be integrated into the Roman legal framework. Rather than enforcing a single, unyielding set of statutes, the empire adopted a hybrid system that respected local traditions while ensuring allegiance to the core ideals of Roman governance.
Each province maintained a local court that operated under the guidance of imperial law, but had the flexibility to rule on cases based on regional customs. This system fostered a sense of autonomy among the diverse peoples of the empire while still reinforcing the supremacy of Rome. A merchant in Alexandria, a farmer in Gaul, and a senator in Rome all lived under the same overarching legal order, yet they also enjoyed the protections and rights unique to their status and heritage.
With the legal codification came an even greater emphasis on citizenship. The reforms of Emperor Caracalla, which had previously granted Roman citizenship to nearly all free men within the empire, were expanded to ensure that citizenship was not just a title, but a living, breathing reality. The new legal framework guaranteed rights, including property protections, the right to a fair trial, and the ability to appeal directly to the emperor's court.
Slavery, long a fixture of Roman society, also underwent profound changes. The empire recognized that an economy built solely on servitude was neither sustainable nor just. A system of gradual emancipation was introduced, wherein enslaved individuals could earn their freedom through military service, skilled labor, or public works projects. By the 7th century, slavery had been replaced by a system of contracted labor, wherein former slaves became legally protected workers who contributed to the empire's growth while enjoying rights and protections under the law.
The legal reforms of this era were not merely tools of control, but instruments of unity. The laws encouraged integration rather than domination, fostering a shared sense of Roman identity among the empire's many peoples. The once divided classes of Roman society, patricians, plebeians, and foreigners, began to merge into a more cohesive structure, where advancement was based on merit rather than birthright.
Education played a critical role in this transformation. Legal literacy was promoted across the empire, ensuring that even common citizens understood their rights and obligations. Schools of law were established in major cities where future magistrates, governors, and scholars were trained in the principles of Roman justice. The study of law became a prestigious discipline, and legal scholars were revered for their role in shaping the empire's governance.
To ensure the integrity of the legal system, Rome developed an extensive bureaucracy dedicated to the administration of justice. Judges and magistrates were held to strict ethical standards, with rigorous training and oversight to prevent corruption. The emperor himself maintained an imperial court that served as the final authority on legal disputes, ensuring that even the most powerful officials remained accountable under the law.
Criminal justice was reformed to focus on rehabilitation rather than sheer punishment. While severe crimes such as treason and murder still carried harsh penalties, many lesser offenses were met with corrective labor, fines, or exile rather than execution. The empire recognized that maintaining order required not just punishment, but reintegration, a concept that would influence legal systems far beyond Rome's borders.
By the end of the 7th century, Roman law had become the model of justice for the known world. The Codex Romanum influenced emerging civilizations beyond the empire's borders, shaping the legal traditions of nations from the steppes of Asia to the distant isles of Britannia. Rome was not just the ruler of lands, it was the architect of civilization itself. Chapter 4. The Dawn of a Roman Renaissance. By the 8th century, the Roman Empire had not only survived but thrived, forging a civilization that no longer merely clung to past glories, but actively shaped the future. With its political and legal foundations secure, Rome turned its gaze toward the arts, sciences, and philosophy, ushering in an era of unparalleled intellectual and cultural rebirth, one that would later be known as the Roman Renaissance.
Unlike the post-Roman Europe of our timeline, which fell into the darkness of feudal fragmentation, this world saw the continuous patronage of knowledge and learning under imperial guidance. Rome's intellectual revival did not wait for the 15th century. It flourished centuries earlier, setting the stage for a more advanced and interconnected world.
The empire's vast libraries, many of which had been threatened in the past by war and neglect, were meticulously preserved and expanded. The Library of Alexandria, once thought lost to history, was not only rebuilt but transformed into the most advanced academic institution in the world. Scholars from every corner of the empire, from Athens to Carthage, from Constantinople to Hispania, gathered in grand halls to debate, research, and document discoveries in philosophy, medicine, astronomy, and mathematics.
The Roman government, recognizing the power of knowledge, established imperial academies in major cities. These institutions, modeled after the great schools of Greece, provided education to not only the elite but also to gifted individuals from all classes. Learning Latin and Greek became a standard part of education, but so too did mathematics, engineering, and the study of law. The concept of meritocracy took root, as talented individuals could ascend to positions of influence based on their intellect and contributions, rather than birthright.
With the revival of intellectual thought came a flourishing of the arts. Architecture evolved beyond the grandeur of past centuries, embracing new styles that merged Roman symmetry with the intricate detailing of Eastern influences. Cities across the empire saw the construction of grand forums, palatial domes, and towering obelisks, each a testament to the artistic ambition of the age.
Sculpture, mosaic work, and fresco painting reached new heights. Great artists emerged, their works adorning temples, public buildings, and even private residences. Murals depicting Rome's history and myths became common, while statues of emperors and philosophers lined streets and gardens. Artists were no longer seen as mere craftsmen but as visionaries, supported by imperial patronage.
One of the most stunning developments of this era was the construction of the Grand Pantheon of the Eternal Empire, a monumental structure in Rome that symbolized the unity of the empire's diverse cultures. It combined elements of Greco-Roman, Persian, and Egyptian design, demonstrating Rome's ability to not only conquer, but also integrate and elevate.
While art and philosophy flourished, science and engineering surged forward with equal momentum. Roman advancements in architecture had long been unmatched, but now a new wave of innovation took hold. Engineers, leveraging centuries of accumulated knowledge, began experimenting with steam power, hydraulics, and early mechanics, technologies that would, in our timeline, have to wait a millennium to be fully realized.
Steam-driven machines, originally used for simple tasks like pumping water from mines, were refined and repurposed for broader applications. Water mills, which had already revolutionized grain production, were adapted for metalwork and textile manufacturing. Workshops in Constantinople and Carthage began to develop rudimentary clockwork mechanisms, early precursors to modern automation.
Roman medicine, too, took a great leap forward. With the empire's vast network of cities and roads, doctors and scholars were able to exchange knowledge across regions, improving surgical techniques, sanitation standards, and public health initiatives. Hospitals, once primarily military facilities, evolved into academic institutions where physicians trained under masters of their craft. Anatomy and pharmacology became formal disciplines, leading to more advanced treatments for diseases that had once plagued the empire. The Roman Renaissance was not confined to visual and mechanical arts. It was also a golden age of literature and philosophy. Writers, philosophers, and historians flourished under imperial patronage, producing works that would stand the test of time.
Latin, already the lingua franca of the empire, became more sophisticated and expressive, evolving into a language of poetry, rhetoric, and scientific discourse. Greek remained the language of philosophy and higher learning, ensuring that the works of Plato, Aristotle, and their successors continued to inspire new generations of thinkers.
Roman historians meticulously documented the empire's achievements, ensuring that knowledge was not lost to time. Unlike past eras, where the victors wrote history to glorify themselves, this period saw a push for more objective, analytical approaches to historical writing. The study of history became an academic discipline, with scholars examining the causes and effects of major events to learn from the past.
The Roman Renaissance was not just an artistic and intellectual movement, it was a political statement. It declared to the world that Rome was not merely a relic of the past, but the architect of the future. The empire was no longer defined by its conquests alone, but by its ability to cultivate knowledge, beauty, and innovation.
By the dawn of the 9th century, the world under Rome was not one of stagnation, but of limitless potential. Cities glowed with marble and torchlight, filled with scholars debating under grand colonnades, artists sculpting visions of gods and emperors, and engineers devising machines that would shape the next era of human progress.
Rome had not only endured.
Rome had not only survived.
Rome had created a world where civilization never faltered. And as the dawn of a new millennium approached, the empire prepared for its next great evolution. Chapter 5: The Industrial Catalyst. By the 10th century, the Roman Empire had reached a pinnacle that far surpassed any civilization before it. The intellectual and artistic flowering of the Roman Renaissance had set the foundation for a new and unprecedented transformation, an early industrial revolution centuries ahead of its time. While the Rome of our world eventually crumbled, this Rome forged forward, harnessing ingenuity and technological progress to reshape its empire into an advanced, mechanized powerhouse.
For centuries, Rome had relied on its vast slave-based economy to fuel its industries. But as the empire evolved, so too did its approach to labor. With the gradual abolition of slavery and the rise of contracted labor, the workforce became highly specialized and motivated by innovation rather than mere survival. This shift in economic dynamics paved the way for technological breakthroughs that would redefine Roman society.
Engineers and inventors, building upon the scientific discoveries of the preceding centuries, perfected steam-driven machinery, greatly increasing efficiency in agriculture, mining, and manufacturing. Coal deposits found in Britannia, Germania, and Dacia provided an abundant energy source, fueling the expansion of mechanized production. Rome, once known for its stone monuments, now became a civilization of iron, steel, and mechanical ingenuity.
The imperial workshops, originally centers for military equipment and infrastructure projects, transformed into massive industrial complexes. These factories, powered by steam engines and hydraulic energy, produced everything from textiles and ceramics to tools, weapons, and even rudimentary mechanical devices. For the first time in human history, mass production became a reality.
One of the greatest achievements of this era was the development of steam-powered locomotion. Roman engineers, inspired by centuries of road-building expertise, created the world's first railway networks, allowing for unprecedented speed in both travel and trade.
By the late 10th century, a sophisticated rail system connected major cities across the empire. The Via Ferrata, or Iron Roads, stretched from Hispania to the eastern reaches of Mesopotamia, from Britannia to the African provinces, revolutionizing commerce, military logistics, and cultural exchange. These railways enabled merchants to transport goods at record speeds, while legions could now be deployed across the empire within days rather than weeks.
With the rise of industrialization came rapid urbanization. Cities across the empire grew exponentially, requiring new solutions for housing, sanitation, and infrastructure. Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, and Carthage became metropolitan giants, their skylines punctuated by towering aqueducts, bustling marketplaces, and towering factories billowing steam into the sky.
To manage this unprecedented growth, Rome's architects and city planners devised innovative solutions, including
Multi-story residential buildings, proto-skyscrapers to house the swelling urban population, underground sewage systems capable of handling the needs of industrialized cities, reducing disease and improving hygiene, gas-powered street lighting, making night travel safer and extending commercial activity beyond daylight hours, advanced water supply networks, including pressurized water towers, to provide running water to homes, bathhouses, and public fountains.
Rome's obsession with infrastructure ensured that industrialization did not lead to chaotic, overcrowded slums, but rather to highly organized, efficiently planned urban centers.
Rome's military, always at the forefront of technological advancements, underwent a transformation that would make it the most formidable force the world had ever seen. While traditional Roman discipline and strategy remained paramount, new weaponry and tactics emerged, fueled by industrial innovation.
Steam-powered war machines, including primitive tanks and mobile artillery, gave the legions unprecedented battlefield mobility. Gunpowder, discovered through trade with China centuries earlier, was now fully integrated into Roman warfare. While still in its early stages, the development of rudimentary firearms and cannons altered the nature of combat. Fortifications and defensive structures evolved as well, incorporating steel-reinforced walls, early landmines, and automated ballistae capable of defending strategic locations.
The legions, once known for their disciplined shield formations, now wielded both the might of tradition and the power of modern technology.
Rome's industrial and technological advances expanded its economic influence far beyond its borders. The empire's trade network, already extensive, now stretched across every known continent, reaching as far as the distant Americas, where Rome's approach to colonization was radically different from the European empires of our timeline.
Instead of conquest through brute force, Rome engaged in strategic alliances with indigenous civilizations, offering citizenship, infrastructure, and protection in exchange for resources and trade. The Mayan and Andean civilizations, impressed by Rome's wealth and technology, became integrated trading partners, supplying rare materials like gold, silver, and exotic crops in exchange for Roman engineering and medical advancements.
The Roman economy flourished as a result, with merchant houses and industrial guilds becoming powerful entities that rivaled the aristocracy in wealth and influence. The empire had transitioned from a land-based power to a global economic superpower, dominating trade routes from China to the Atlantic.
By the 11th century, the Roman world was unrecognizable compared to its early days. No longer a traditional empire of emperors and senators alone, Rome had evolved into a technocratic state, where scientists, engineers, and industrialists held as much power as generals and politicians.
Education had become universal, with imperial academies producing generations of scholars, inventors, and skilled workers. The printing press, another Roman innovation, had made books widely available, ensuring that knowledge was no longer restricted to the elite.
Rome stood at the edge of an even greater transformation, one that would propel humanity into a future beyond anything imagined in antiquity. The age of steam, iron, and intellect had set the stage for an empire that would last not just for centuries, but for millennia.
The eternal dominion of Rome was no longer just a dream, it was a reality.
As the Roman Empire entered the 12th century, it was no longer confined to the borders that had once defined it. The Industrial Revolution had granted Rome unprecedented mobility, wealth, and power. With steam-driven ships, advanced navigation techniques, and an insatiable curiosity, Rome's influence stretched beyond the known world. The age of exploration had begun, not in the 15th century, as in our timeline, but centuries earlier, under the banner of the Eternal Dominion.
Roman merchants and scholars had long heard tales of distant lands, the legendary Isles of the West, the great continent beyond the Atlantic, and the frozen lands of the North. With its technological advancements, Rome was no longer content with speculation. It set out to map, study, and integrate these distant regions into its growing sphere of influence.
The Nova Terra expeditions 1130–1150 AD. Led by renowned Roman explorers, the imperial navigators, these voyages crossed the Atlantic, discovering and establishing contact with the civilizations of the Americas. Unlike the brutal conquests of European powers in our timeline, Rome approached these new lands with diplomacy. Trade, cultural exchange, and the promise of Roman infrastructure led to alliances with the Mayan, Aztec, and Incan civilizations, who saw the benefits of Roman engineering, medicine, and knowledge.
By the late 12th century, Roman fleets had successfully circumnavigated the world, charting new lands and mapping distant oceans. The empire established trading posts in Japan, India, and along the eastern coasts of Africa, solidifying its position as a global power. Roman merchants sailed freely across the Pacific, engaging in commerce with advanced Asian civilizations and bringing back exotic spices, silk, and scientific knowledge.
No longer bound by warm climates, Rome pushed toward the extremes. Expeditions to the Arctic Circle provided new insights into astronomy, magnetism, and ocean currents, while early settlements in the Antarctic, called Terra Glacialis, became outposts of scientific discovery.
Unlike the European powers of later centuries, Rome saw expansion not as conquest through subjugation, but as integration through prosperity. The empire's philosophy of governance, refined over millennia, was one of cooperation rather than oppression.
Instead of eradicating indigenous cultures, Rome established imperial protectorates, where native leaders retained their rule but adopted Roman governance models.
The Lex Nova Terra, a new legal code, guaranteed rights to indigenous peoples, offering them Roman citizenship if they chose to integrate.
Infrastructure projects, including roads, aqueducts, and public baths, transformed newly discovered lands, elevating them to the standards of Rome's urban centers.
This strategy allowed Rome to expand without igniting constant rebellion, creating an interconnected world rather than a fractured one.
The Roman Empire now spanned every known continent, and its trade networks were unmatched. Cities from Nova Roma, New Rome in the Americas, to Syrica, China, were linked by steam-powered merchant fleets, railways, and airships, a Roman innovation derived from early experimentation with flight.
Major trade routes included
The Mare Nostrum trade network, linking Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. The Silk Imperium Road, connecting Rome with China and India, fostering a scientific and cultural renaissance across Asia. The Transatlantic Exchange, bringing potatoes, corn, tomatoes, and gold from the Americas, transforming Roman agriculture and industry.
Rome was no longer just an empire of cities, it was a global civilization.
With newfound access to the southern hemisphere and previously unseen skies, Roman astronomers revolutionized humanity's understanding of the cosmos. The great observatories of Alexandria, Constantinople, and Nova Roma charted the movements of stars, planets, and galaxies, centuries before Galileo or Copernicus would have in our timeline.
The Helio-Roman model 1200 AD, Roman scholars proposed that the Earth revolved around the Sun, shattering old beliefs and setting the stage for modern astronomy.
By the early 13th century, Rome had not only conquered lands, but had connected the world in ways unimaginable. Latin remained the lingua franca, spoken from the marketplaces of Britannia to the palaces of Japan. The Roman model of governance had been adopted by countless civilizations, ensuring stability across continents.
As new frontiers emerged, Rome prepared for its next great challenge, not just ruling the world, but understanding it on a level beyond conquest.
The Eternal Dominion was now more than an empire. It was a civilization without limits. Chapter 7, Pax Romana in the Modern Era. By the 13th century, Rome had evolved beyond a mere empire. It had become a global civilization, spanning continents and influencing cultures worldwide. Unlike the fractured Europe of our timeline, where nation-states waged endless wars, the Pax Romana, or Roman peace, persisted, ensuring stability, economic prosperity, and scientific progress.
The world under Rome was not a utopia, but it was a civilization that had successfully navigated the pitfalls of history, avoiding the Dark Ages and instead embracing an era of constant advancement. The principles of governance, law, and citizenship that had been refined over centuries ensured Rome's survival into the modern era.
While the early Roman Empire had been ruled by emperors with absolute authority, the modern Roman state had evolved into a constitutional government, blending the old Senate-based system with a more democratic and meritocratic approach.
The Imperial Senate. Once an advisory body, the Senate had transformed into a true governing force, composed of elected officials from across the empire. Every major province had representation, ensuring that decisions were not made solely from Rome or Constantinople, but with input from Africa, Asia, the Americas, and Europe.
The office of the emperor. No longer an autocratic ruler, the emperor functioned as a head of state, much like the modern presidents of democratic republics. His role was to unify, inspire, and oversee major decisions. But laws were drafted and passed by the Senate.
The Tribunal of the People, a system of courts independent from the imperial administration, guaranteed citizen rights, fair trials, and legal protections. Rome had pioneered universal human rights, ensuring equality regardless of ethnicity, religion, or origin.
This balance of power eliminated the instability of past centuries, preventing civil wars and authoritarian rule, while preserving the efficiency of centralized governance.
Rome's focus on engineering had only strengthened over time, and by the 14th century, the empire had entered an age of unprecedented infrastructure expansion.
Transcontinental highways, the Via Maxima, an evolved form of the original Roman roads, now spanned from Britannia to the Americas, from Egypt to Japan, connecting the empire with a seamless highway system.
Electric-powered cities. With early advancements in electricity, Rome pioneered urban electrification centuries before our timeline. Streets were lit at night, factories operated around the clock, and public services, such as hospitals, schools, and libraries, thrived.
The aero-via-air roads, with the invention of airships and early aircraft, long-distance travel became a reality. By the 15th century, Rome had developed airborne transport, connecting the most distant provinces with high-speed aerial fleets.
Rome was no longer a static empire of stone. It had become a living, breathing civilization of constant motion.
With global trade routes secured, industrialization perfected, and technology advancing at an unprecedented rate, Rome's economy surpassed anything imagined in antiquity.
Universal currency, the imperial denarius, backed by a combination of gold reserves, agricultural wealth, and industrial production, was accepted worldwide, ensuring economic stability.
Trade without borders. The old Silk Road and Mediterranean trading hubs were now obsolete. Goods moved across the world via rail, sea, and air, ensuring rapid economic growth. By the dawn of the 16th century, Rome had eliminated poverty, starvation, and economic instability across its vast dominion.
The Roman state had long integrated diverse cultures, but the modern era saw the final dissolution of ethnic divisions. No longer defined by conquest, the empire embraced a shared global identity.
The imperial university system, public education, was now free and accessible to all, ensuring that every citizen, regardless of class or origin, had access to knowledge.
Multilingual society. While Latin remained the official language of governance, the empire embraced multilingualism, preserving regional dialects while ensuring a unified linguistic framework.
Cultural renaissance. Inspired by centuries of stability, artists, musicians, and writers flourished, creating a society that was both technologically advanced and artistically rich.
Roman citizens, whether in Hispania, Nova Roma, or India, no longer saw themselves as separate peoples. They were all Roman, united by law, opportunity, and shared prosperity.
By the 17th century, the world had not experienced a major war in centuries. The old cycles of rise and fall, war and destruction, collapse and rebuilding had been broken.
The Roman legions, still the most powerful military force in history, now served not as conquerors, but as peacekeepers. The empire had outgrown the need for territorial expansion. It owned the world.
Instead of focusing on warfare, Rome turned its attention toward the final frontier, science, space, and the mysteries beyond Earth.
For the first time in history, humanity was free from fear, free from war, and free to dream without limitation.
The Eternal Dominion was now not just an empire, but the blueprint for civilization itself. Chapter 8. The Individual Symphony. By the 18th century, the Roman Empire was no longer simply a governing entity. It was a vast orchestra of human potential, where every individual played a part in shaping the future. With the Pax Romana securing stability and the economy flourishing, Rome's citizens no longer lived in fear of war, poverty, or oppression. Instead, they thrived in a society that valued intellect, creativity, and ambition.
This was not an empire of rulers and subjects. It was an empire of dreamers, inventors, scholars, and artists.
For much of history, innovation had been confined to an elite class. But with Rome's vast system of education, merit-based opportunity, and free access to knowledge, every citizen, regardless of birth, had the tools to create, invent, and contribute to civilization's progress.
Imperial research hubs. Modeled after the Library of Alexandria, massive research centers in Rome, Constantinople, Nova Roma, and Carthage became incubators for technological breakthroughs. Public laboratories. Every major city had government-funded innovation centers where citizens could experiment with new ideas, from medicine to engineering. Technocratic sponsorships. Instead of relying on the patronage of the wealthy, the Imperial Senate funded promising individuals, ensuring that brilliance was never wasted due to lack of resources.
The age of the citizen innovator had begun. A farmer's son in Gaul could become a leading engineer of flight. A merchant's daughter in Alexandria could develop new medical techniques, and a philosopher in Britannia could reshape scientific thought.
Rome had built a world where genius was no longer limited to the privileged few. It belonged to everyone.
While science and technology soared, art, music, and philosophy entered a golden age. With universal literacy and abundant free time due to automation, citizens pursued their passions like never before.
The evolution of music. With advanced instruments and global influences, music became a universal language, blending Roman classical compositions with the rhythms of Asia, Africa, and the Americas.
Philosophy's new horizons. Thinkers in Rome debated not just the ethics of governance, but the morality of technology, artificial intelligence, and even space exploration.
Where other civilizations in history had forgotten their artists in favor of war, Rome nurtured its creators, ensuring that beauty and wisdom flourished alongside progress.
With advancements in steam power, electricity, and early robotics, Much of the menial labor that once defined civilization had disappeared. By the 19th century, intelligent machines handled agriculture, industry, and public services, freeing citizens from the constraints of labor-driven survival.
Basic needs secured. Roman citizen feared hunger, homelessness, or disease.
Shortened work weeks. The concept of a 40-hour work week had long been abandoned. Most people worked less than 15 hours per week, focusing instead on research, art, or leisure.
Universal healthcare and education. Every citizen had access to free medical care, higher education, and technological enhancements to improve quality of life.
The empire's greatest achievement was not conquest, but liberation. Liberation from the drudgery of survival, allowing every individual to pursue meaning and ambition freely.
By the dawn of the 20th century, the idea of Rome had transcended geography. No longer simply a political empire, it had become synonymous with civilization itself.
Latin, still the official language, had become the universal tongue of science, philosophy, and diplomacy.
Citizenship was no longer tied to land. It was tied to participation in the shared human endeavor of progress.
People of all races, cultures, and backgrounds identified not by their ancestry, but by their contribution to civilization.
Rome had not erased cultures. It had united them under a single, unbreakable principle.
Humanity was strongest when it worked together.
And so, with war a distant memory and human potential unleashed, Rome prepared for its final and greatest endeavor, transcending Earth itself. Conclusion, a legacy unbound. The eternal dominion had achieved what no civilization before it could. It had broken free from the cycles of rise and fall, war and ruin, ignorance and rediscovery. The world was no longer shaped by the fragile whims of empires destined to collapse. Instead, Rome had endured, evolved, and expanded, not just in power, but in understanding, wisdom, and ambition.
By the 21st century, the empire had become something greater than an empire. It had become a universal civilization, a force that no longer sought mere dominance over land, but mastery over existence itself.
As Rome had once conquered the known world, it now set its sights beyond Earth. With centuries of uninterrupted scientific progress, the empire had reached for the heavens, not as conquerors, but as explorers, scholars, and builders of new worlds.
The imperial space fleet, with advanced propulsion systems, the first Roman interstellar vessels left Earth in the early 21st century, not just to explore, but to colonize and expand humanity's reach into the cosmos.
Mars and beyond, the first permanent colony on Mars, named Nova Augusta, became the first city beyond Earth, a beacon of Rome's ambition.
The search for new life. The vast imperial astronomical network turned its attention toward the stars, seeking not just new planets but new civilizations to learn from, trade with, and unite under the banner of knowledge.
Rome's greatest achievement was no longer its roads, its legions, or its cities. Its greatest achievement was its endless pursuit of the unknown.
As the empire entered its third millennium, humanity had become something greater than any Roman ever could have imagined.
War had ceased to exist, replaced by diplomacy and cooperation.
Hunger and poverty were forgotten, replaced by abundance and opportunity.
Ignorance had been erased, replaced by knowledge and wisdom.
The Roman spirit, once defined by conquest, was now defined by creation. The empire no longer sought to rule people, but to rule possibility itself.
The dream of an unbroken Rome, an empire that never fell, never faded, never crumbled into history, had become a reality.
Rome had not simply survived.
It had transcended.
It had become eternal.
Epilogue, a message to the future. In the vast halls of the imperial senate, beneath the golden dome of Nova Roma, a single inscription stood, etched into the marble for all eternity.
Civitas aeterna sapien infinita.
An eternal civilization, infinite wisdom.
This was Rome's message, not to its citizens, but to the future itself.
A declaration that no matter how far humanity traveled, how many worlds it reached, how many ages passed, it would never stop seeking, never stop learning, never stop building.
This was the true eternal dominion.
And it would last forever.
The end.